Another road trip for the IPFW men's volleyball team took them to face George Mason in Virginia and NJIT in New Jersey. This weekend, the results were a little bit different than last week for the Mastodons, winning both matches. Friday night, the Mastodons swept George Mason 3-0, and then Saturday night, it took a great comeback to defeat NJIT in 5 grueling sets. I'll be sitting down this week with head coach Ryan Perrotte to discuss this week's events and look forward to the start of MIVA conference play this coming week, as well as being joined during the Spotlight segment with freshman setter Michael Keegan. I'm your host, Jordan Armstrong. Stay tuned for more on VolleyDons Weekly. Welcome back to this week's episode of VolleyDons Weekly. I'm your host, Jordan Armstrong. Before we start today's show, I'd like to thank our sponsors once again, Alco, Active Ankle, ASICS, Glenbrook Dodge, and Hyatt Place. As I mentioned during the opening, the IPFW men's volleyball team had 2 great non-conference wins this past weekend, taking on George Mason from Virginia and NJIT in New Jersey. 2 very different matches this weekend for the Mastodons.
Is that a question?
It's a statement to see if you want to elaborate on it or not.
I'm really tired.
Long nights? Too much video?
Well, I had a long night last night because I was up watching the Iowa caucuses last night, and the caucuses were something else. It was unbelievable.
Were they? Which part?
I was up until
the speeches, the results.
I was up until 2 a.m. Well, the thing was they didn't have the Democratic one called yet, and the Republican was Cruz ended up winning. And I don't know. Cruz is he's born in my country. He was born in Canada.
Yes, because
Trump is making a big deal because he's Canadian. Well, he's not really Canadian because you get to pick the citizen. But it was fascinating watching the caucuses last night of Iowa. I thought it was just pretty interesting. Is there a caucus thing in New Jersey that we went to?
No, we played volleyball in New Jersey. We also played volleyball in Virginia.
And it was a great weekend, by the way.
It was.
It was a great because
despite the travel. Travel was a little bit long.
It's always difficult to travel so far. George Mason's a good 10 hours, and then you got to travel another 3 or 4 hours to get to New Jersey. In Newark. But it was a great weekend because we won both matches and played pretty well in both of those matches. And Saturday in particular, we had to kind of scrap and grind a little bit. And so I was really, really pleased with it.
Friday night's match in George Mason was a battle of the first-year head coaches, yourself in your first season as IPFW's head coach, but also a very good friend of yours, Jay Hosak, a former assistant coach at Penn State, who is now the head coach at George Mason. In a match that the Mastodons won 25-18, 26-24, 28-26. So the last 2 sets very hotly contested going down to the wire. We had some really great performances from some of our pins and also a very strong serving effort from the night.
Well, it's always difficult to play a friend, I think. But it's even better to play a friend after you beat them. And you can shake their hand and have a big smile on your face. And I've known Jay for many, many years. I worked with him a few years ago with USA Volleyball. And he's a great coach, and he's going to be a wonderful coach at George Mason. Our serving was very good, and it got us out of some trouble. I thought Colton Stone served very, very well for us. He had a couple aces, a couple big aces for us. And as you mentioned, we got some left side production. In particular, Tony Price, I thought, played very, very well, and his numbers, I think, proved that. But also the play of an individual who didn't even start, who came off the bench in Austin Neese, who did some unbelievable things for us in the third set, or late in the second and in the third set as well. I thought our balance was there. I mean, it was a hotly contested match. Some questionable officiating calls, some unbelievable long rallies that we won at least 80% of.
Which was very different than some previous matches we've had of high-level caliber as well.
Absolutely. I thought our blocking was unbelievable. Michael Keegan stuff blocked a couple balls. I almost had a heart attack on the bench with his elevation at the net. I think he stuffed 2 or 3 in a row. I liked our backcourt defensive effort. I thought it was a really good, complete game by a lot of people.
Speaking of backcourt defensive effort overall for the weekend, Luis Bertrand was just named MIVA Defensive Player of the Week after totaling 9 digs on Friday night against George Mason and then 10 digs Saturday against NJIT. But a bigger constitutes a reason why he gets that also. He had 0 reception errors, reception errors not being aced off of the opponent's serve. So being able to keep the ball in system for our team so we can run our offense was kind of a credit as we passed the ball very well overall for the week.
Friday, I thought we passed the ball much better than what we did Saturday. And part of that had to do with the facility in which we played in. Saturday at NJIT, we played in a much lower ceiling complex. And that could cause difficulty. And by the way, it was a lot darker. It's probably darker than the studio playing on Saturday night at NJT. But Luis has done a really nice job being very steady for us in the backcourt. I think not just he, but Tony Price as well, Colton and Austin did a really nice job in our serve-receive game. A week earlier, I had changed the direction in which we were taking gaps and seams, and I thought they adjusted that very, very well under such short notice. But Luis has been a steadfast volleyball player for us, and he was voted preseason MIVA Libero of the Year, so that's a wonderful accomplishment that he's the player of the week.
Now, transitioning from Friday's match into Saturday's match, as you mentioned, the environment was a little bit different. The gym much darker and light, lower ceilings, but also a very scrappy team in NJIT is a word I would use to describe them, and that they can also did a very good job putting away junk balls, as we call them, really high out-of-system balls when they don't pass very well, but somehow their attacks still really find the floor, and that's a credit to one of their players, the big outside number one for them.
Jared DeBarkey, I think his name is, something like that. NJIT could have beaten 3/4 of the teams that they would have played on Saturday. Friday night when they played Ball State's our travel partner, so we went to George Mason, they go to NJIT, and then we flip-flop the next day. They made a lot of errors. They made, I think, almost 35 errors in the match. And I knew that would not take place against us. However, that being said, the intensity in which they played, and this individual that you talk about there, one outside, who's tremendously athletic, he's from Barbados.
Jabari Goodridge.
He's from the Caribbean, Barbados, was unbelievable. I mean, he was unconscious. I think he hit like 364, some audacious number. But the energy in which they played in the environment which it is, dark, low ceiling, we handily won the first set. And then all of a sudden something sparked within them where the errors didn't come. I mean, they served aggressively. Everything was in play. They played unbelievable backcourt defense. They blocked balls. We were very, very fortunate to win that match. And it's a testament to our guys because it's something that we had talked about in regards to learning how to grind, to play from behind and overcome some obstacles. And they were able to do that. And I was very, very pleased because there were spurts where we looked good and then we looked really bad. And there were a lot of great performances again. I thought Michael Keegan set the ball particularly well with a good offense. Our middles, even though they didn't see a lot of balls in terms of numbers, they did a lot of unbelievable things down the stretch of sets 4 and sets 5. And then, of course, lastly, Austin Neese comes in off the bench for us in place of Colton Stone and makes 2 unbelievable plays and saves us again.
Definitely. A credit to all the bench players that came in. We also made a substitution to put Kyle Fitzgerald in for Graydon Schrader towards the late half of the fourth set when we were actually down. So that type of a switch definitely allowed us to not only get some new energy on the court, but also stabilize some of our middle attacking and blocking.
And the other 2 things to make note quickly is that our serving subs are doing a great job. Scott McNerney and Gabriel Quinones are doing a great job coming in off the bench. And also the bench energy that we have. Ever since Penn State, our bench has become the sideshow, but they've provided so much energy for the guys on the floor, it's really made a difference in the outcome of how we've played.
For sure. So next time we sit down with Rock during our third segment, we'll be talking about the upcoming MIVA schedule that begins this coming week. In our next segment, we'll be sitting down with freshman setter Michael Keegan to discuss how he's adjusting to playing Division I volleyball for the first time, as well as getting to know him a little bit more. You're watching VolleyDons Weekly on CTV.
I'm a professor in the Department of English and Linguistics, so I teach medieval literature classes and Latin language classes. So the topics I teach tend to be difficult, so learning how to read Chaucer's Canterbury Tales in Middle English is difficult and slow-going. I always call my students, my junior medievalists, because that's what I like to think I'm doing, is creating, the next generation.
Welcome back to VolleyDons Weekly. For this week's Spotlight segment, I'll be sitting down with freshman setter Michael Keegan. How's it going, Michael?
Pretty good.
You're from San Diego, California.
That's correct.
How did you end up in Fort Wayne, Indiana?
Well, I wanted to play Division I volleyball. That was my goal throughout high school. and I had a couple offers to play in California, but this was kind of the best option for me as the best education and the highest level volleyball team. And I talked it over with my parents, and they said it's 4 years, go experience something new. If you don't like it, you can always come back, but I've had a good time so far.
And speaking about education, you're an engineering major. Tell us a little bit more about what you're hoping to do with that.
I actually have no idea what I'm hoping to do. I'm pretty good at math and I like physics, so I went to a couple camps. I talked to a few professors, and they said that the best option for me, if that's what I really like doing, would be mechanical engineering. And I'm still in the very early stages of it, so I don't know how it'll be yet, but it's not that bad so far.
So talk a little bit about the fall season for you, incoming freshmen, getting adjusted to not only college itself from an educational standpoint, but also the demands of being a student athlete on campus. How was that adjustment period for you?
Early in the fall, it was a little rough. I think I started off failing my first 2 math tests because I just hadn't got the time management quite down. But once I kind of understood that when I had to fit in everything, I had to get to practice, and then I had to get to workouts, and I still had to fit in my homework, I kind of organized everything a little bit better, and then it became easier. It's hard adjusting more this semester with the travel, but during the fall, it wasn't that bad.
Speaking of travel, we've been on the road for the past 2 weeks. We're now 4 weeks into the regular season with MIVA conference play starting this week. How would you assess the first 4 weeks of non-conference play, not only for you as an individual, but also the team as a whole?
I think we've been doing well. Obviously, there's some games, Harvard and St. Francis in particular, where I know we could have played better. And it's hard, especially seeing the level that we've played in at practice or in other matches against good teams, and then not performing. But I think so far it's been a pretty good 4 weeks. I think obviously there's some wear and tear on the guys. We have a couple people wearing down. But I think everyone's giving it their all, and hope it keeps going well.
Now, looking back at some of the past matches, this past weekend at George Mason and NJIT, not only were they some pretty good matches for you individually and the team as a whole, but a little bit of a special moment for you as your father and your brother were able to fly in from San Diego for the matches, not only to see you play, but also do a little bit of college visits for your younger brother. How was it having them in the crowd?
It was really cool. My dad has always been my biggest supporter. He really wanted me to keep playing. He knew I could do it. He helped me out with a lot of the stuff. So I think it was just, he had streamed all the games he could. He follows all the stats. But I think it was really cool that he got to come see me play. And it was a fun experience for me. I mean, I got to, let him see what all my hard work has led to. So and it's always fun seeing my little brother. He's definitely an interesting one. So yeah, it was cool getting to see them for a little bit.
All right, you were telling us a couple of stories about him. So Rock alluded to it a little bit during his segment, but something that really, in my opinion, showed a lot of growth, we worked on it a little bit in practice last week, was your blocking technique. It wasn't necessarily the greatest beforehand, but it wasn't terrible, but we really focused on your hand placement and getting your feet to the spot that the hitter's coming in at in time to be able to adjust to block the ball. So talk about how that kind of came around, especially towards the end of the match at George Mason when you had 3 blocks in probably a 5-point span.
Well, yeah, like you said, my blocking isn't the best. And it's a real hard adjustment from club to college. The game is completely different. It's so much faster that the blocking move you have to completely redo. So I've been working a lot in practice, like you said, coming in and trying to just keep getting better. And I think against George Mason, it finally paid off a little bit. And the other guy was talking a little bit, and it kind of got me fired up, and I really wanted to get that block. So I think that's kind of what drove me a little more. And, yeah.
You had 2 blocks that I remember especially, one that you stuffed him straight down, but then the other had actually hit him in the head as it went out of bounds, so some pretty good feelings there. So looking ahead for you as the season progresses, still getting through some of the initial freshman first season, all of that type of stuff as conference play begins, what are some goals that you not only have for yourself but for the team going forward as we enter this next stage of our season?
Well, obviously, we've all set our goals, and whether they're realistic or unrealistic, you want to do the best you can. And I'm hoping to beat some pretty good teams. And as far as my personal play, I don't think if I play well, it reflects on our team playing well, and if I play poorly, our team will probably perform poorly. So I think it comes down to I just need to keep working and getting better so that I can perform at my best to give our team the best chance of winning.
Now, there's also a lot of work outside of just the volleyball court that goes into it, between meetings and scouting reports and everything like that. How instrumental is the outside part of the preparation for matches to you being able to perform on court?
The outside preparation is a lot, not only meetings and scouting reports and all of that, but there's also training that goes into it. So outside of practice, you still have to go in, try to get extra reps in the gym, extra reps in the weight room. And then you also have your meetings with coaches, your scouting reports to try to figure out the best way to beat the other team. Because volleyball is a big mental game. And I know Rock's been really trying to get the intangible aspects for me, or to better the intangible aspects for me. So I know there's a couple things that I need to keep working on that aren't my play, but my mannerisms, how I hold myself, how I talk to my teammates and all of that. And I think those meetings really emphasize those points and make you focus on what you really need to work on that week and then try to pick something to get better at.
As many of our viewers are familiar with, as being a setter on the volleyball court, you're kind of referred to as the quarterback in terms of volleyball. So there's a lot of leadership responsibilities in making sure that our offense moves in a smooth enough fashion where we can be successful. How has kind of being thrown the leadership role on court of being that quarterback type player kind of changed your view on your play as well?
It's definitely challenging. I mean, I'm coming in as a freshman, and it is a leadership spot, and you have to go in with guys who are seniors who have been through their 4 years and been doing this a while, and you have to earn their respect. And it's been a work in progress. I'm still working on getting better. I think there's always more I can do, but I think I'm doing a pretty good job so far. And I don't know. You just have to keep going in and demanding the best. So that's something I need to keep doing.
So enough serious talk for now. Let's start having some fun. What are some things that you enjoy doing besides volleyball, outside the court, that you like to do with your teammates and everything like that?
I just like spending time with my team. It's a really awesome group of guys. I mean, we're all in the same boat, with the exception of 2 players. We're not from Fort Wayne, so we've all left our old friends, our family, for the time being to come out here and play volleyball. So we all know that's our main priority, is to play well, but when we're not doing that, we find ways to have fun, whether it's going bowling as a team or just hanging out together.
Gotcha. And how has the ever-important food aspect of becoming a college student and having to cook on your own a little bit, since we don't have a dining plan here at IPFW, how has that kind of gone on?
That one's hard, especially making yourself cook. You come home from practice and doing homework and you're tired. I've ended up eating Taco Bell more than I care to admit. But yeah, it's interesting. You kind of have to plan it out, but my parents are generous enough to give me enough money to eat for the month, so I'm pretty good there.
Always got to love the support from mom and dad for sure.
Oh, yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up here at the end of our Spotlight segment, is there anything that you kind of look forward to really being able to try and accomplish, or what's your highlight that you're really looking forward to so far for the rest of the season? Especially with not only conference play starting, but the trip down to Puerto Rico and your first playoff experience on the horizon. What's really the big diamond in the skies that you're looking for?
I would just love to go out, because I know there's the ranking votes that come out, and we weren't on that. I'd love to just go out and show what our team can do. I mean, if we go out, we play a lot of good teams, Ohio State, Loyola, Lewis, and I think if we go out and beat some of those teams, people will start to see that IPFW is the real deal. So I'm just hoping to go out, play well, have our team perform at a high level, and get some recognition.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Greatly appreciate it. That'll do it for our Spotlight segment this week with freshman setter Michael Keegan. As he alluded to, the MIVA conference is starting up in the next couple weeks with a few matches. We'll be sitting down with head coach Ryan Rock Perrotte again in the final segment this week to discuss what the MIVA schedule looks like and the strength of the conference overall. You're watching VolleyDons Weekly.
My research is from applied electromagnetics and from component level design to system level and then integration of these components. We have a basically well-established laboratory that we are using both for research and teaching. I think one of the great advantages that we have is the small classroom environment, because small classroom environment help us to engage students with one-to-one, and that dialogue helps us to know our students better.
Welcome back to VolleyDons Weekly. I'm your host, Jordan Armstrong, and joining me again for the final segment this week is head coach Ryan Perrotte.
What's the final segment called?
The fifth set.
Yes,
The fifth
or,
set.
or dishing
Or
the
dishing
rock.
the rock.
I
Either
like
or.
that. Dishing
I
the
think in
rock.
spirit of our 5-set victory, we should use the fifth set. Or, dishing the rock. See what you can offer us and your insights looking forward to the start of MIVA conference play. MIVA!
My friend Lauren said dishing the rock. That's good. By the way, I want to do a quick shout out. Can I do a quick shout out?
It's your show.
We have a live studio audience.
We do.
Jody and Ava are here from Columbia City watching the show. First time ever live studio audience from Columbia City. So
We
hi,
welcome
ladies.
them. Hopefully there's some good feedback coming from the live studio audience.
They are thoroughly enjoying themselves.
So as I mentioned, the start of MIVA season for the VolleyDons is coming up this week with traveling to Ohio State to take on the number 7th ranked in the country Buckeyes on Thursday. Then we will be coming back Thursday night for about 8 hours and then leaving Friday afternoon to head towards McKendree, which is near St. Louis, to play them Saturday. How does the start of the season look in your eyes?
Well, it's a tough trip because you play, you travel, you play, you travel. I mean, it's been that way since the third week of January.
Road Warriors, like we said.
And in our conference, McKendree and Ohio State are travel partners, so you got to play them almost together. Ohio State, a lot of people think is the best team in our conference. They're experienced, they're seasoned, they have size, they are talented, and they can serve the ball probably better than anybody else in our conference. McKendree is young, hungry, enthusiastic, energetic. They're still learning the game. Last year, if you recall, the only win that they had in conference play was against us at their place. So this week will be a big test for us, especially opening up against Ohio State, and it's a good thing that we're opening up at Ohio State. We traditionally play well in Columbus, Ohio. Andy Sellen is from there, so that makes it even better yet for him in terms of his performance. And the fact that we're coming off of 2 straight wins in the fashion in which we've played, I think it's a good time to go out and play Ohio State and let the chips fall where they may and see how good we really are.
Of course, when we speak about conference play, the goal is to win every night, but there definitely is a sentiment to trying to win early in conference play compared to winning on the back end, because you'll kind of have a series lead against the opponent the second time you play them. Some teams have already started conference play. Ohio State this past weekend took on Quincy and Lindenwood and got 2 wins, while Grand Canyon and Lewis actually split their matches. So looking at the landscape so far, kind of a first week through the MIVA season, how do you see things kind of unfolding long-term wise?
Well, the split with Grand Canyon and Lewis was very interesting because that was at Lewis, and Lewis rarely loses at home, especially in conference play. I have said this now for the last 3 years, and people may argue with me. They always lose, of course. I think our conference is the best conference in volleyball. And it has been the last 2 years, partially because Loyola's won the national title back-to-back years, but because our conference has gone out and beaten the MPSF teams or the IVA teams or the Carolina schools. This year, I think the parity in our conference between 1 and 9 is as close as ever. Again, I think the strength is there. I don't think we've had the same showing out of conference this year as we have in the last previous years. The MPSF has probably overtaken us in that regard. But our conference, in terms of talent, in terms of size, in terms of ability, I think ranks up there. And you can't take a night off anymore. Before there used to be, easier matches to play. Well, that's no longer the case. Grand Canyon is much improved. Quincy and Lindenwood are competitors every night, like with McKendree. And then you got the usual suspects: Ball State, Ohio State. I think will be very good. Lewis and Loyola and us in the mix. So you have got to make sure that you're able to bring your A game every night and willing to compete every night. If not, you will get whitewashed by a team.
When looking at the national rankings, the MIVA has definitely a presence nationally, as we mentioned before, with 4 teams ranked inside the top 15, which is how many teams get polled, with Loyola Chicago at 4, Ohio State at 7, Lewis at 13, and Ball State at 14. Michael kind of alluded to the team having a really big goal, especially right now during the season, of cracking back into that top 15 rankings, which we've been at for a majority of the past 2.5 seasons. So what is it going to take for the VolleyDons to be able to crack into the top 15 and get some national notoriety from the other coaches?
Well, we were on the cusp earlier this year. We had some votes trying to get into the top 15. In order to get into the top, you got to be consistent. We had a really good showing at Penn State, but then lost to St. Francis the night before. We started off very strong against Stanford, beat Sacred Heart, and then end up losing to Harvard. I think had we beaten Harvard, we would have been ranked. It's about a consistent showing. I mean, if we go out and beat Ohio State and then turn around and lose to McHenry, well, again, it's this inconsistency thing up and down. So we've just got to be consistent, win matches. That's a goal that the guys set. They want to be ranked in the top 15 in our national poll. I think it's a great goal to achieve. But it's about going out and proving it, because you can say it all you want, but if you don't go out and prove it, then it doesn't mean anything.
For sure, and not only proving that, but also proving that what we did last week, being able to sweep George Mason and come back from a deficit to take NJIT in 5 sets, wasn't also a fluke within itself.
No, because you can't talk the game, you got to go play the game. And beating George Mason on the road at George Mason, that's a tough deal. And then to beat NJIT the way that they played at NJIT, I think speaks volumes.
For sure, we had some great performances by individuals last week. Hopefully the same will continue this coming week as we start MIVA play. And that'll do it for us here at VolleyDons Week. That is it. Quick show today. Quick show. That's what happens when you talk a lot and you're very energized, even though you said you were tired when we opened.
You and I look exactly alike with the jackets. Thanks for coming, Jody and Ava.
And thank you for watching VolleyDons Weekly this week. A quick shout out again to our sponsors, IAB, Indiana Physical Therapy, Molten, O&E, and Pizza Hut. And we'll see you next week on VolleyDons Weekly. And will we see them on the court? I think we'll see you guys on the court. Have a good one.